Magic reveals itself to those who remember where to look for it. This is Magic Hour, and I'm your host, Taylor Page. Hi, my loves. Taylor Page here. I wanted to swoop in before the episode starts to let you know about Sagittarius season Earth Angel Club, which will be 6 p.m. Pacific time, Thursday, December 5th. And if you can't make it live, it will be recorded and you can listen to the replay link as many times as you'd like. Earth Angel Club is a monthly gathering where I discuss the current astrology. I do an energy reading for the group. I lead a guided angelic meditation. The theme for Sagittarius season is shining as our brightest self with Archangel Uriel. Scorpio was so much about the shedding of the ashes, and now Sagittarius is that rebirth into the light. So I'm so excited to meet with you guys. You can sign up at angelsandamethyst.com, and you can use code EARLY until Monday, December 2nd for $11 off. Angelsandamethyst.com. The word "and" is spelled out. And the last part of Earth Angel Club is that I give ritual guidance to make the most magic during the season. And there is a ticket tier that includes an email angel reading as well. Those tickets do sell out pretty quickly, so I can't wait to see you there. Much love. Welcome back to Magic Hour, everyone. I'm your host, Taylor Page.
And I'm your producer, Claire. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm so relieved to be back this week. It has been an uphill battle. I really appreciate all of the love and the healing light and the well wishes. That really helped get me through. For those of you who aren't on Instagram and haven't seen some of my stories, I've just been battling a really intense case of COVID, which was really interesting because I had COVID last year and it was such a chill case. I think the UK might have more herd immunity than here in the US because it was like so intense, and mostly intense because I didn't know what was going on. And I had 8 days in a row of over 101 fever, and it just was not going down and not breaking no matter what I did. And I was like, am I okay? And then I got my period at the same time. And then my autoimmune thing flared at the same time because I think COVID can kind of bring up some other things that were struggling in our body. So it was like truly a trifecta. And then the election, I'm pretty sure my body just hit the eject button and I was like, I can't. And I just went down. And Claire was telling me before we started, I feel like because I'm so sensitive, when the heightened energy collectively is so intense, I get taken down. And that is honestly really true.
Yeah, because I also felt like the timing of it was crazy. Like I really felt like it was Tuesday morning that you were like, I'm not feeling great. And then like immediately got worse and unraveled. And it was like your body was almost feeling our collective freak out in that moment.
And I would be more freaked out by that if I'm not used to it by now. Like by this point in time, I see the correlation. Like, you know, when the George Floyd stuff was happening and the Black Lives Matter things happening, my whole heart chakra burst out in a rash. And I'm just a very sensitive person. And when things are heightened collectively, I do feel it in my physical body. And sometimes I just have to take care of myself in those moments.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. You're so energetically tuned in to all of us. And I think you've done a great job of creating that boundary and that sacred space where you're not just like always tuned in. But I think maybe when things are so heightened and so intense, it's like the barrier's not that strong. Like you can't help but have it sort of flood in. And I know most of us were really feeling it these past couple weeks. And sometimes our body, my mom always says this, she's like, when you get sick, it's your body being like, please slow down, please take a seat. You need to just take care of yourself for a little while. And I think that can help reframe it because I always get such crazy FOMO when I'm sick and I'm just like, I'm missing out on all the fun. But I think, you know, sometimes we just need to rest and care for ourselves. And I think regardless of if you're feeling sick or not in this moment, that is a great reminder of sometimes we need to just slow down and take care of ourselves, our hearts, our bodies, our minds, so that we can face the challenges that are in front of us.
Absolutely. And I really did need to rest. The other thing before we get into the questions and stories for the week is my birthday is November 18th. That is the last day of Pluto in Capricorn. It moves into Aquarius forever on the 19th. Or not forever, but it's not going back into Capricorn in our lifetime. And I was like, okay, as an astrologer, logically, I had a feeling that this was going to be an intense birthday and an intense Scorpio season for me personally, because the modern ruler of Scorpio is Pluto. And what Pluto does affects Scorpios a lot. So, Pluto switching signs and all of that. And then my birthday being like on the last day that it's in Capricorn, I was like, well, I probably know there's going to be some death and rebirth and intensity and all of this stuff, not to mention my North Node, which is like who you're here to grow into and the lessons that you're here to grow and learn and embody, is in the final degree of Capricorn. So Pluto is sitting exactly to the degree. It's not only the final degree, but it's like on some softwares, it's 0 Aquarius. On other, it's 29 Capricorn. It's like right at the moment when the nodes were shifting into Aquarius. So like exactly what Pluto's doing now is like activating my North Node, and I just got taken the F out.
That's hilarious. And also such an interesting synchronicity with you and who you are. That's when you were born. I feel like you are an agent of change and up level for the world, and you're here to help us with these types of transitions and growth and becoming what we're here to become. And that's amazing.
I appreciate that. I do kind of feel like Pluto is activating me, like that I'm needed in this time with my North Node there. So yeah, I'll try my best, but sometimes I just get taken out.
And that's okay.
Yeah. But I do briefly want to speak about Pluto moving into Aquarius. When this comes out, it will be freshly in 0 degrees of Aquarius. And something I observed with this Pluto in Capricorn time is that, yes, all of the Capricorn themes of career, patriarchy, traditions, traditional power structures, all of those things really did come out, but so did the sister sign of Cancer. And if you join Earth Angel Club, I talk about how the first 6 signs of the zodiac are a recipe for healthy embodiment of the second 6. And so I feel like this Pluto in Capricorn time was also really pulling at the Cancerian archetype of home and self-care and motherhood and mother wounds and all of that sort of inner world vulnerability. There's been so much talk of like cycle breaking and ancestral healing. It's like all of that is the Cancer Capricorn axis. And so I think as Pluto moves into Aquarius, which is really going to rule power to the people, humanitarianism, technology. We already see the shadow sides of AI starting to come out. All of these themes are going to be so pronounced. And as well as, friendships are going to change, community is going to change, authenticity is a big theme. But the sister sign to Aquarius is Leo. And so Leo is all things of the heart. It is inner child healing. It is following your passions. It's our hobbies. It's our creative expression. It's shining our light. It's really living a heart led life. And I think that Pluto and Aquarius is going to pull at all of the places that we're not in alignment with our heart in this next chapter. And that's going to be a really big counterbalance weight to the Aquarian themes coming up.
It makes sense, both for myself and also for this moment, at least in the US, because I think all of that power to the people, it's like this is a moment where that's going to be more prevalent than ever as we face this challenge and come together as a people to uplift these ideals that I know are deep in so many of our hearts of love and community and a world where we can all thrive and where the earth can thrive. It's like, it does feel like this big moment of shift. And in a way, it gives me a lot of hope.
Yeah. And I think each polarity has a different lesson to teach. And if we don't master Leo energy, which is building a life of love, following our heart, being brave, like bravery is such a big part of Leo energy, being generous, really feeling passionate and lit up about life. If we're not grounded into that heart space energy, grounded into our creative expression, which reminds me of a quote that Sarah Lyons said that was in a time of such great destruction, we have to meet that force with creation. And that really is Leo, creating from a heart led space. Without that, then we'll never find what we're meant to do on the bigger Aquarian scale. Then we don't know what our authenticity is, who our aligned community is, who our aligned friendships are, how to best utilize our humanitarianism. Because if we can't be passionate about our own individual life, it will be really hard to be passionate about helping fix things on a big collective scale. And so I think that this polarity is just going to have so many important lessons for us. And so if the Aquarius energy is feeling overwhelming for people, and the power to the people and everything going on the macro feels overwhelming, come back to the Leo archetype. Come back to your heart, to your passions, to your creative force. Leo also rules biological children. It rules our inner child, connecting to that energy. And there's just so much beauty there. So come back to that when the world feels overwhelming.
Yes. And I love what you said about the creativity. I think I'm a person who's actively living a creative's life, if you will, an artist's life. And I think sometimes we can have this weird idea about creativity that it's for certain people. But maybe if I'm not a painter or a writer or a dancer, that I'm not being creative. But creativity extends to every single aspect of what we do. The way that you decorate your bedroom, the way that you have a conversation, the way that you show up in the world. There's so many ways to express your unique creativity. It doesn't have to be your job or in this like higher, loftier idea of I'm an artist and I'm creating a movie. It's like the way you make your coffee can be creative and is creative. The way that you, like I said, decorate your room, or the way that you observe and interact with nature, like all of that, we are literal creators. Like that is what I think this existence is, and then lives through us. And connecting into that without this idea of what's my passion or what's my purpose in life. It's like your passion can be so small and subtle about the little details about your life as well. And you don't have to get totally lost in the like greater passion necessarily, but the passion of each moment that you can choose to make your whole life as art.
I love that so much. And it's so true. I think sometimes we can look at creativity only as like in a beret with paint or like tap dancing on a stage. But creativity, what just came through to me as you were speaking was that creativity is the heart's magic. And I feel like magic is the physicalizing of intention. And creativity is the outpouring of love into physical form. And spirit speaks through creativity, through imagination. Our angels and guides love to work with us through creativity. And so, just like you were saying, that doesn't have to mean doing something for productive output. That just means engaging with life in a way that you're following your heart and not just going on automatic pilot, but thinking creatively about how you want to be the queen of your own life and what that looks like. And so I just love that idea and that meditation of creativity being the heart's magic. I think that's really beautiful.
I love that so, so much. I had such a beautiful night the other night. I'll just share this quickly, where I was with some friends and we were kind of winding down from our night. And we were at a friend's house and he had a piano. And so one of our friends went to the piano and he plays well and he started to play around. And then another friend picked up a guitar and he plays the guitar well and he started to play around. And then my friend ended up pulling out, he had all these instruments, recorders and rain sticks and little bongo drums, and eventually brought out a violin and a flute. And the rest of us weren't good at any of those instruments. But we ended up having this like organic jam session where we were all just kind of like trying it and finding it. And because there was no pressure of like, we need to make a song that's good, it was just like, join in if you want and like make some sounds. And it was the most joyful experience. Like we all were so changed and lit up about it. And it was all just about being playful and creative. And I think, like you said, finding that from the heart space and taking all the pressure of how it looks and how it shows up and just doing it because it's joyful and from the heart.
Yes. And I think a key word too that you just said was play. I think we are missing play in this society. And I think part of the reason Magic Hour resonates so much with the collective is that magic is a creative force. Magic has a sense of whimsy. And I think another layer that's missing is that play. And I think that that is really tied to our inner child and that Leo archetype that we're talking about as well. Life can feel so intense and brutal and out of control and chaotic. And sometimes we just need to come back to play because that Aquarian energy can be very cold. The air can feel distant and aloof and cold. And that's why the Leo archetype is needed. It's the warmth, it's the fire, it's the passion. And so I think play is a really big part of that, like letting yourself be silly. You and I met at Groundling, so we're no stranger to play. Like improv is literally the most playful thing in the entire world, and it's the best. And I think everybody needs a little bit more of that. Just because we're adults now doesn't mean our inner child is just wanting to sit in a cubicle for the rest of our life. Like we need things that feel fun and playful and push us a little bit out of our comfort zone so we can keep growing and evolving.
I agree with that so deeply. Like you always talk about playful curiosity and approaching life with playful curiosity. And I think we can also do that with playful creativity. Like, how can we? It's so funny that we disconnect from play as we become adults, as if it's not for us. And I think it is a time to reconnect to play. Like, how can we be playful in our relationships? How can we be playful with ourselves and our space? Like, it is so joyful to connect to that, and it's always available to us.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I hope that this inspires you guys. If you're feeling overwhelmed, come back to the Leo archetype. Give yourself permission to have some light and some play and some creativity. And that's going to be the force that then contributes to the healthy expression of the Aquarian energy being transformed and called in. So let's move into some questions and some stories.
Yes, I'm so excited. You guys have been sending in such beautiful stories, heartfelt stories, amazing questions. So thank you so much. If you have a question, please send it into contact@magichourpod.com and we will include it in our log of questions. And it just helps the collective so much for you to express what you're wondering about. And also sharing your stories is just so beautiful and touches me so deeply. And I'm so excited to share some of these. So let's dive in. So the first one is from Leah, and it's both a story and a question, which I love. A few of you have done that. And I think that's just extra magical. So I've been listening to Magic Hour since episode 105 was released, Healing the Witch Wound. Believe it or not, my therapist was the one who recommended this podcast to me. As someone who has been exploring her spirituality within the last 2 years, I have grown a deeper appreciation for manifestations, magic work, mediumship, and everything when it comes to spirit. The story I would like to share first takes place at an event that happened a little over a month ago. There was a medium and holistic expo that was happening in my town. Myself and 2 of my best friends decided to go. My one best friend could not stay long and left. My other best friend and I decided to get an aura photo and reading done. This was the first time that either of us had this experience, and a lot of the information given in the reading resonated with both of us. It was crazy to see the differences in our auras. Hers was a lot of warm colors like red, oranges, and yellow, where my aura was mainly blue, but had all the colors of the rainbow. We even saw glimpses of our spirit guides in the photo. A few weeks later, I went over to her house after going to a pagan festival where I won a raffle. I don't normally win those things. We decided to go into her spiritual space to do our readings for one another and look at the goodies that I had won from the raffle. There is a light that she had on her wall that was orange, but after I walked past it and sat down, it turned blue. My friend was not aware that that light even changed colors, let alone was near the remote when the color changed. She was the one who noticed the light changed. My question involves our auras. and how this connects to the space around us. Do our aura colors change at all based on our experiences and what we're going through? I know you have not talked a lot about auras in particular, but this is still a new and fascinating subject for me. I would be curious to know your thoughts. Thank you for continuing to make this podcast. It truly makes my week, and I share your messages to my fellow hummingbird community. Keep your sparkle and much love. Best, Leah.
Oh, thank you so much for this, Leah. I have like the biggest smile on my face right now. That's so, so sweet. And I love this story and this question so much. So I just want to say really quickly that the Healing the Witch Wound episode is 103, and 105 is the Fusion of Science and Magic with Jessica Gill. So I just wanted to put that out there in case people were looking for those episodes. And I appreciate you for being such a long-term listener, Leah. I think that's amazing. So auras are something that I do experience in my practice. It's interesting because clairsentience and claircognizance are my main two clairs, which are feeling and knowing. That being said, seeing is what came online third for me, and seeing is clairvoyance, where you see the aura colors. So for me, as an angelic intuitive, the way that I experienced auras was very interesting because when I work with your angels, they show up in a similar resonance as your higher self. So if your angels are showing up blue and purple, I know that those are your aura colors that want to be expressed. So there's a really beautiful connection between our angels and how they show up for me and our aura colors. That being said, I think that there are two different types of layers to our aura. There's our authentic soul colors that want to be expressed. And blue, in particular, in my experience of it, is very much tied to intuition, empathy, the water element, flow, spirituality. So that's really beautiful. And also, as you were telling that story, I really got called to look at the chakras that are the corresponding colors that you were bringing up. So blue is the throat chakra. So it might be more about sharing your voice, sharing your truth, opening up your throat a little bit more. And for your friend who had a lot of orange, that's the sacral chakra. That's sensuality, creativity, fertility, creation, manifestation. So I think that there's a really beautiful connection there with the chakras that were coming up in those colors. The way that your guides made sure that the light changed for that blue to be reflected is sort of, I think, a double message there. That being said, I also think that there's elements of our aura colors that do change with us and our moods and what we're going through, because I've had long-term clients who their aura will look one way when we start, and years later, it will start to evolve and expand and include more of maybe their authentic colors or different areas. For example, in a reading just a couple weeks ago with a client, her angels were showing me that her aura was red and blue, but that she never was allowed to express the blue, that she always had to be in her red, and that her whole life she had to be strong and in charge and a fixer and never show her emotions and go for things and be sort of in her warrior energy, and that she came from a family where the blue was not encouraged. And so then her angels were showing me that it was time for the blue, because the red is a part of her authentic code, but not the full part. And without the blue, she didn't have the GPS to know which direction to channel the red energy in. And so sometimes I think we can incarnate into circumstances, whether societally, family, etc., that don't encourage part of our aura expression. And it's up to us. I think that the formula to that expression is authenticity, personal power, and love. It's not like you have to have access to an aura photographer to be like, well, what color do I need more of? I think the answers are all internal. But I do want to tell a story that I've never told on the podcast before about an early time in my development with auras. So there have been two times out of sessions without clients that I've seen auras with actually my physical eye. So it's very rare, and I've only seen it twice, where somebody had a fully gray aura. There were no colors. The first time was my mom right before she passed. I saw her aura, and when she had cancer, her personality changed at the end. And it's actually before we knew she had cancer. It was right before her diagnosis. I saw like all of her kind of purples and whites and blues that were usually in her aura. They were just all gray, and her personality changed, and she just was not in her usual vibration. So it was a really interesting time because I was going back to Los Angeles. I was home in Ojai when my mom passed, and I had to go back to LA to get a funeral dress to wear. And I went to one of my favorite restaurants in LA, and the waitress came out to me, and I saw the same gray aura around her. And it was so weird because it was a relatively short amount of time that I saw those two auras in. And when that happened, I was like, she's probably just having a bad day. I don't know why I'm being shown all this gray around her. I left her a really big tip, and I was like, I hope this just makes her feel better. So that night, I got on Instagram. I was back in Ojai, and I follow that restaurant on Instagram. And the very first thing I saw was a post that that waitress passed away later that day after I saw her. And she had that same gray color that I saw around my mom. And I was so shocked because, first of all, after my mom just passed, I hadn't been on social media very much. I was just like in my own world, but something told me to check it. And then that was the very first post. And so, because of that, I think that there's definitely situational things with our aura that when we're in a moment where maybe we're about to pass or something happens and our light dims, I think that there's conditional colors and things that happen as well. And I would really like to dive deeper into the topic of auras because it's something that is very fascinating and very interesting. When I was at Arthur Findlay College and we were sitting in the cabinet, we could see with our third eye how spirit was changing her aura colors, like the spirit world that was merging with us and the different spirits that were merging with us with physical mediumship in the cabinet had different colors as well. And we were all in the class seeing the same thing. We're like, up above the right shoulder, there's green and there's this here. And so I think that it's very interesting. I also think that our angels and guides speak through our subconscious associations. So I think if you are seeing an aura color around yourself, go with what you associate that color with, maybe more than what you would Google search online for that color to represent. But I think that auras are really interesting. And I think science is even catching up to auras because I know there are studies of, is it called like electromagnetic field or something like that? I don't know what they're calling it these days, but there's actual measurements that can be done on the light that we radiate. And so I think science and magic are different sides of the same coin. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see how, because even when you walk into a room, if you're not clairvoyant, you're just clairsentient like me. I'm clairvoyant as well, but if your clairvoyance isn't developed yet, you can feel people's auras. You can feel people's energy. So I think people who see auras are just seeing what other people are feeling, and we're all experiencing it in a different way.
This is such a fascinating topic and something I don't know a lot about. And well, I'm not like you, but I'm more similar to you in that I think clairsentience is my strongest clair. So I've never experienced seeing an aura, but I really feel people's energies. And it makes sense to me that we probably have a unique frequency or a unique color that when we're shining our most brightly is probably the most vibrantly expressed. And then when we're in a struggle or expressing a certain type of feeling or emotion like anger or sadness or despair, that color might shift or even dim because we're not fully in our natural and most expressed vibration. And I definitely don't see that, but I can feel it with people of like, I can feel this person's energy is joyful and lit up and released and expressed. And I can also feel this. It's almost like, sometimes in cartoons, they'll have that like scratchy cloud above them. And it's like they're mad or angry or sad. It's like almost like that shift in energy. And it's not something I'm seeing, but it's like a specific feeling. And so I would guess that auras are similar to that, but it's just so fascinating. I've never had my aura read, and I'd be so curious. Like, I have some ideas about what it might be, but I'd be so curious to find out what other people might see.
I know it's so interesting. And I just want to say too, like when it comes to your aura colors, there's nothing about this that I want to make you guys superstitious or feel like you're lacking in something or that all your colors aren't expressed. Because remember that all of this psychic information is for us. Things that come through, feeling, seeing, hearing, knowing, are coming through from our guides and our higher self to give us the message. And that's the point. So our aura colors aren't a prescription of who we have to be. They are a message and another way that our guides can get through information to us through color associations. So even if your aura is temporarily off, the colors that are being expressed are a message to show you how to come back to flow and harmony and authenticity. It's sort of like how we can get superstitious about the planets, we can get superstitious about what all these things outside of us are doing. They're a reflection of our inner world. So just focusing on being our happiest, most lit up, most powerful self, that is all we have to do to be in alignment with our aura colors. And the point of them is the message, is the sort of mirroring and emotional sounding board so that we can think of things in just another language. Auras are just another language, another way to get the messages. And so for people who have synesthesia and things like that, where they associate colors and things with different emotions, auras are just another language, another way of saying the same things that your angels and guides will get the messages to you no matter what.
Yes, I love that. I love framing it like that. And it just made me think of something I've been really focusing on lately. I think sometimes we see challenges or struggles or when things come up as like this negative, and even thinking about it with the aura, like you said, of, oh, maybe my aura is dimmed right now because I'm struggling and that's bad. But something I've really been observing in myself and my loved ones around me is like when we are challenged, it is an invitation to deepen and strengthen into the person we really want to be and we know we're here to be. And the struggle, even though it's unpleasant and crunchy, is this beautiful tool, this beautiful opportunity to help us do that. I think sometimes we can want to wish those things away, like a mistake you've made. I shouldn't have behaved that way. But it's like, yeah, but your response to that has helped you deepen and step into the person you want to be. You want to be somebody who doesn't behave like that. And by doing that or having that experience, it gave you that information. And so I think all of these things, yeah, are like information for us to help us strengthen and deepen into the authenticness of ourself and who we know we are and know we want to be.
Yeah, that's such an important point. And I really think that all of these things are messengers. It's like this whole spiritual path is for self reflection, self realization. And I think that just like unpleasant messengers like desperation, frustration, jealousy, anger, those emotions are messengers. So too can an aura color be a messenger of what needs to come back into balance or what's asking to be expressed. And I also do genuinely feel like sometimes with these spiritual things that our ego can come into play. And it can be like, these are my colors and I'm special because these are my colors. But I also really do feel authentically that we all have the capacity in some way or another to embody every single aura color. So I think that no matter what direction or chapter we're being called to in life, we have the ability to embody every single aura color. And some aura colors might come more naturally to us because they're part of our authentic code. And I think it's similar with aura colors. It's like for some people, it does not come naturally to be emotional. Let's use this as an example. But then they work on themselves and they open their heart and they let themselves feel. And maybe more of that blue does come into their aura. So I don't want us to get into a limited way of thinking about auras. Like I can only show up in these three colors because these are my colors. I think we all can really embody all of the colors. And I don't want anything to feel limiting. I want the colors to be more of a messenger system for you to look at the vibrations that are asking to co create with you in the moment.
Yes, I love that. I think that's true for the astrological signs as well. It's like I feel like we can get stuck being like, I'm an Aquarius, so that means I'm this, that, and the other. And while that is perhaps true of us, I think we have the capacity to embody all of the signs and have the qualities of all of the sign. And so there's no need to limit yourself with any of this information. Like you said, it's just information to help you connect deeper to the call of your heart and the frequency that you're here to embody and express in all of its beautiful complexity.
Absolutely. And that's such a good example because we're all born under the same night sky. We're all born with all of the archetypes within us, and all of the archetypes exist within a house in our birth chart. So we really do have all of the signs within us, which is why it's so funny to me when people are like, Leos can't love Cancers. It's like, what are you talking about? But anyway, when you look at a birth chart, and there's a stellium, meaning three or more planets in one house or sign, that's a big exclamation point saying this is one of the archetypes that you're here to really process and look at the world through in this lifetime. But that doesn't mean there isn't capacity for all of the other archetypes to enrich your life as well. And I think that's such a good comparison to aura colors, where it's like, yeah, I have a Sagittarius stellium. That might mean I have a lot of red in my aura or whatever the example is. And that might be a color whose frequency I'm here to express and experience. And then at the same time, that doesn't mean that there isn't capacity for the other archetypes or colors to come through. And I think the last thing I want to say about aura colors is, what are your favorite colors? What colors bring you joy? Because I think color magic can be so powerful as well. And I think we can have more than one favorite color, but if a color is really speaking to you in that moment, like meditate on that color light, dress in that color, get crystals in that color. I think that colors can be really, really powerful allies as well.
I love that. I'm gonna focus on that this week and connect into color a little bit more.
Yes, thank you so much for that question, Leah. That was really fun. And I have been wanting to tell that aura color story about the waitress because that was a very crazy experience. And there was actually another layer to that story where, like I said, my mom had just passed and I was in a really deep grief at that moment. And on that Instagram post, I saw that that waitress left behind a 9-year-old boy. And that was the moment that I shifted to gratitude that I got 30 whole years with my mom, because it could always be harder. And that little boy only got 9 years. And I felt like that time had sort of multiple layers because I did see that pattern with the aura colors that really tripped me out at the moment. But it also had that message that was so powerful to shift me to gratitude for the time I did get with my mom.
There's always a way that we can shift to gratitude, even in a difficult moment. And there's such a power in that, even in our grief.
Yeah, it was a big wake up call. It's like finding the balance between feeling your feelings, knowing that the pain I was feeling was, of course, justified and real, but also remembering that there's always gratitude as well. And I feel like the silver linings, it's like funny because just last week when I was laying in bed, I was thinking about how the silver linings are our spirit guides. Like our silver linings are our spirit guides protecting us in every single moment that feels so harsh and intense. It's funny because I actually forgot about this. It's like one of those things I was thinking about right before I was falling asleep, that like the way that we can find silver linings, that's in proportion to the way our spirit guides are always looking out for us and protecting us. Like those silver linings are like the silver of our angel's wings.
It is so beautiful. And, I think grief, in all its complexity, is also an expression of love. It exists because of the love you got to experience. And I think that is a beautiful silver lining.
Absolutely. Like the silver linings bring us back to the truth that we are always supported and held.
Yeah, so beautiful. Okay, we should move on to another story or question. And we actually got a voice note from one of you hummingbirds. And so we wanted to share that on the podcast. So let me pull that up. So this was a beautiful voice note about synchronicities from Tav.
Hello, Magic Hour. I just wanted to share a story that happened only a couple weeks ago, right after I had a reading with Taylor, which was amazing. She told me that my father was going to be sending me hawks and my grandmother was handing me a rose. And already I thought that was so beautiful. So that evening, I had a new oracle deck that I really haven't seen anything of it yet. And the card that I pulled had two hawks and a single rose on it. And already I just started crying and thought it was so beautiful. But it gets crazier. So the next morning, I am on the subway heading to Penn Station to go upstate. And I've lived in New York 15 years, and this has never happened to me. I'm sitting on the subway, I have my headphones in, and someone taps me on the shoulder. And I take my headphones out, and it's an older guy holding a memorial pamphlet, and he hands me a rose and says, "Something is telling me that this is for you." So I just wanted to say, this magic is also real. Thank you, Taylor, for the message. What an emotional 24 hours that was. Thank you so much.
Oh, that is such a amazing story. Thank you so much for sharing that. And that is how it works. Once we are aware of the sign, our people on the other side will move mountains to get it to us. And just full chills. First of all, a new Oracle deck that you've never worked with, and there are hawks and a rose on the same card. That is just so beautiful because to me, what's mind blowing about synchronicities like that, which I've shared on the podcast before, that synchronicities are spirit's form of art on earth. And what's very interesting is that they knew everything that had to go right for you to have a reading with me, to have that deck, to open that deck after the reading. It's like they're planting little seeds, like the synchronicities that are coming into bloom for us are already being planted right now. Little things are already being planted in our life right now so that they can even years from now have a payoff. And so it's so cool the way that spirit isn't restricted by time or space so that they can make things happen in a way that blows our mind in this perception of time and space. And I also think it's so beautiful how that stranger was like, I just felt like I needed to give this to you. Because that's an example of earth angel energy, meaning we're listening to our angel's influence and making physical changes here on earth. People ask me sometimes, if angels exist, then why is the earth so heavy and dark and all of these things? And it's because angels can only affect the earth in direct proportion to how much we listen to them as a collective. And I love that that man handed you that rose because it gives a good permission slip to all of the hummingbirds. If you get this strong impulse to give somebody a kind word, and I'm not saying go up to someone and start giving them a reading or giving them messages. That's not ethical. But I am saying if you just feel like, oh, this person, they could use me to pay for their coffee today, or they could do this. And then you didn't know it's their mom who passed birthday. You don't know the magic you can bring when you just follow the goodness of your heart. I love this story so much. Thank you so much for sending it in. And it's such a treat to get to hear your voice. Please send more voice notes.
Yes, I love this so much. And I was just going to say that as well, Taylor. I've had that experience in my life where I maybe had like an intuitive hit, or I'll have it with like humor. A silly thought will pop into my head and I'll almost have that thing of like, oh, it's so silly. Don't say that. But I'll say it anyway. And then it will create this whole funny moment and inside joke that we laugh about forever. And so I feel like it is just this beautiful invitation of like, if you have the instinct to say something to that stranger or share this compliment or say the silly thought on your mind, do it because you never know what could blossom from that. And you never know what experience someone else is going through that your comment or your act of love could be this beautiful gift for them. That guy had no idea that's what she was going through or having happen in her life. he just felt called to do it. And so you just never know what your love and your energy and your joy is going to do for other people. So take this as an invitation to not hold back with those things. Even if you feel like, well, I don't know this person, that's weird. It's like, yeah, but it could be this beautiful moment for them.
Absolutely. And they will never forget that moment. So there was a time when I was going through a really sad breakup. And sometimes in retrospect, you're like, thank goddess I didn't end up with this person, especially now that I'm with Ari. But at the time, it was like so soul crushing because I really was confused and sad about this person. And it was almost one of the catalysts that started my like angelic intuitive development journey, but it was before I kind of leaned into all of these things. And so I was on my way to work. I was working at the restaurant and I was at a coffee shop before work and I saw him in line with another girl and I was right behind him. And I was like reeling because I was very heartbroken by this breakup. And I was dressed in my all black outfit to go to the restaurant. And they said hi to me and they were being nice. And I was being nice back. And I was just like holding it all in. And so they got their coffees and they left. And I went to get my coffee. And the lady said, "Oh, the person in front of you actually paid for it." And this girl came up to me and gave me a hug and went, "You're way too beautiful to cry about that guy," and left. And that was one of those like earth angel moments. It meant the world to me. I was about to go like spiral at work, and instead I felt so uplifted and powerful and confident. And I was like, wow, that little act of kindness made the biggest trajectory change to me. And that's like exactly what we're talking about. Like she saw the situation, she saw the pain in my eyes, and she uplifted me. And I'll always be grateful to her for that.
I love that so much. That is so beautiful. And that she was even able to pick up on it and like
Yeah.
see it for what it was. Cause it sounds like you guys were being cordial with each other. So that she was able to pick up on it and just knew to say that. It's just such a beautiful example of the power that we have to support each other, even strangers. Like we affect those around us and we get to choose how we want to affect them. And that's such a powerful, powerful thing. I just love that. Like we need all the support we can get, even from strangers.
Absolutely. And who better to be those agents of earth angel energy than the mother effing hummingbirds? Like we are on this path. We're connected with our angels. We're connected with our heart. And that's not saying we have to force it or be crazy or try to push things to happen. But just if you're in a moment and you see someone struggling, be that earth angel for them because it will start a ripple effect in this world. And I think it's more of the healing that we really need here on earth.
Absolutely. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. I think we have time for one more question.
Yeah, let's do it.
Truly, there just are so many to choose from. So if we didn't get to your question this episode, know that we will. We just have so many wonderful ones and they spark such lovely conversations. This is from Shakira. Hi, Claire and Taylor. I have a question for the pod that I'm hoping you can help me with. How do you deal with getting a reading and not fully agreeing with what the reader is saying? I've had readings from a couple of different readers over the past few months. I do generally trust all of these readers and their energies, but I found that sometimes I just can't fully agree with their messages, or they're pulling through guidance and part of it makes sense and resonates, but another part doesn't. I'm generally quite open, but at times I find it hard to believe the message I get. I know you say resonance is a powerful tool for us to know if a message is meant for us, but I'm chewing over what to trust/lean into in a reading if there's a part of a message that resonates and a part that does not. And then I wonder if the part that doesn't resonate is truly because it's not correct or because it's more of an ego thing for me. Like I don't want to accept what I'm hearing. In this space, my mind then also wonders if the message you get is always the absolute truth, and then if that will ever change at all. Examples of this are a love life or career reading about a specific person or job. You might get some bits that you understand and resonates and some that you just don't know or doesn't feel right for you. But does that mean that you need to accept it as the energy right now or forever? It is what it is. What about the possibility for things, like the person or the job in this case, to change? What I'm unsure of in this vein is when the reading has to do with people, is the reading that moment in time and the only truth? Like it will only ever be that way? Or can it change too, since people can change? They do the healing and it brings you into a more aligned space together. So then the guidance could change too, like anything is possible vibes. I hope that makes sense. Kind regards, Shakira.
Thank you for this question, Shakira. There's so much to say about this, so let me break it down. Resonance is so important. And I think that I've spoken about resonance before with a capital R and a lowercase r. And I'm talking about resonance with a capital R when I'm talking about resonance being really important. And I think sometimes when messages come through, if they don't resonate in like a full body way where it's like, no, I just do not feel this, there can be so many different reasons why. One of the reasons can be that it's not accurate information and that you're picking up on that with the uppercase resonance. And for those of you who haven't listened to the previous episodes, lowercase resonance is things that resonate with like our shadows, our worst fears, our ego. Uppercase resonance is what resonates with our intuition, our higher self, our soul. So that being said, you even alluded to that in your question. Like maybe some of these things are just resonating with my ego or bumping my ego, and that's why I'm feeling this way. So, yes, that's a potential. A part of your question that interested me was that you said you've had multiple readings in the last couple months. And I think that to me raises a little bit of not a red flag, but just some considerations of why do you feel the need to get multiple readings and opinions within such a short amount of time? And my sort of rule of thumb as a reader is come back to me when you've applied the wisdom of this reading and it either feels like outgrown or you're asking about something completely different. And I think when we go to readers and ask the same questions, not saying that you always ask the same questions within these, but I'm just using this as an example. When we ask the same questions, I think that raises a little bit more of a question of, are we attached to outcomes? Are we only wanting to hear one thing? It's sort of akin to pulling tarot cards until we get the one that we want. And that can be like a tricky part of divination. So that being said, I think that this is a layered question because, yeah, sometimes people get it wrong. Sometimes readers get it wrong. And sometimes only time can tell. The other part of this is things are not set in stone. As a reader, I'm not a huge fan of predictions. Sometimes, though, predictions come through and I share them when they do. But it's not my aim to give predictions because I believe that every single person has free will. And sometimes when I'm feeling into something that has a lot of components of free will, I say this is the most likely timeline, but things can change with people's free will and personal growth. To me, readings are more productive when they're less about attachment to outcome and predictions and more about navigating this current moment, getting clear on the energy of this current moment and connecting to what's in your power for the highest good here and now, not necessarily other people's energy and trying to control or trying to have attachment to outcomes. That being said, as a reader, when I tune into things, I can get a different experience of the energy than my client. So let me give an example. There's only been one reading in my career that somebody, so if you've had a reading with me, you know the entire time I'm like, does this make sense? Can you understand this? I'm always checking in. And in this reading, the person was like, yes, 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 yes. And then after the reading, she emailed me that she was not resonating, not understanding, didn't know anything that was coming up, even though I was checking in with her time and time again. And so in that reading, as an example, I'm not going to use the exact example. I'll just give a general example so it's not too personal. She was asking about a living situation. And I said, I see you moving around October of next year. And I said some other details. And at the time, she was like, yes, yes, yes. But then afterwards was like, no, no, no. And this reading didn't help me. So fast forward a year, and she reached out to me. And she said, at the time, I was not in an emotional place to get those messages. Everything you said was right. I did move out in October. That's when my lease was up. And it scared me when you said that because I was living with a partner at the time. And I knew that if I moved out of his place in October, that it meant that that relationship wouldn't work out. And so I didn't want to believe anything that you said. But actually, I'm sorry because everything you said was right, which was very kind of her to follow up. And I really appreciated that because at the time, it was a lesson for myself as a reader because I was earlier on in my journey as a reader when that happened. And I was very shaken by this experience because I was like, I don't get it. I checked in with her the whole time. She said yes. And then, like, the last thing I want to do with my sessions is like hurt people in any way or scare them or anything like that. And so it was interesting to me because that story exemplifies somebody who didn't resonate with what I was telling them, but that a year from then, the messages made more sense. And sometimes the messages do take on new meanings as time goes on. And sometimes we're not the version of self that's ready to hear them in the session, and the reader is objective. I wasn't attached to outcomes for her, I didn't know her. That's why it's hard to read for people that we love and know because we want things for them. But with our clients that we don't know anything about them, we can just give objective information of what we're getting. And that can be painful to hear sometimes if it's not what you want to hear. And then that leads me to, do you need a reading or do you need maybe a therapy session about something? And sometimes readings are not the right medium for what you need in this moment. Maybe what you actually need is deeper healing, deeper release, deeper nervous system regulation. And if you're getting a reading and you're asking about something that is so nervous system dysregulating, if you hear about, then I don't think readings are the right medium for you in this moment. I think it's more about healing the trigger underneath that and not trying to get the band-aid of just hearing someone confirm the attachment to outcome that you want to be true. So I think that's another element of this. It's, do you need therapy? Do you need a reading? Do you need some other sort of healing modality? Do you need community time with friends? Do you need a vacation getaway? A reading isn't always what we need, and that's okay. If we can't go into a reading without, not to say we can't cry or be upset or have emotions come up in a reading, because readings are truly safe spaces to feel everything. But this is saying if it's something extremely nervous system dysregulating, if you don't get the exact answer that you need. That being said, readers also tune into the vibration of people's true self, not who they're presenting. So sometimes when you ask about a specific person, it's like they're the best person and they're so kind and they do all of this and they do all of that. But then the energy that we feel when we tap into them is different than that. And maybe you haven't seen that yet. And that leads me to the next point, which is sometimes you aren't the version of self that's ready to hear that yet or fully accept that yet. And a reading won't resonate with you yet because you haven't gone through the lessons, the experiences, and the things that will shape you to actually fully hold the truth of what's coming through. That's why I always say, take what resonates, leave the rest, because what resonates is what you're meant to work with right now anyway. And then the rest of those details can come into further clarity as time goes on. That's what happens. That's why I like to record my sessions so people can hear things that they didn't hear the first time, or things will make sense that they didn't hear the first time. I think that this is a complicated question with a whole spectrum of answers. One just being, yeah, sometimes readers are wrong and sometimes things can change. And then on the full opposite end of the spectrum is like, maybe you're still coming into the version of self that will understand that message. For example, when I got a reading back in the day, my very first reading ever, it was in Salem, Massachusetts at a place called Omen. The lady giving me the reading said, "You're just as psychic as me and you're going to be giving readings professionally." And at the time I was like, ha ha, LOL, what are you talking about? Because I was not the version of self that was ready yet to hear that message. And now I am. And so I think finding a degree of playful curiosity, which is the way to approach this work, seeing, okay, this resonates with me now. This doesn't resonate with me. I'm going to file the things that don't resonate as things that might take on meaning as time goes on. And I'm going to focus on what does resonate with me here and now because that's where I can move forward. The other thing is sometimes when we hear a message rooted in love, like, I am worthy, I am beautiful, I am perfect the way I am, sometimes those things don't resonate with us, even though they're true, because the unhealed part of our lowercase resonance is like, that's not true. I'm not worthy. I'm not beautiful. I'm not perfect the way that I am. So sometimes just hearing messages from a higher consciousness of unconditional love pokes at the part of us that on a deeply subconscious level don't even fully resonate with it. So I think that readings are really beautiful because they fuse together the divine guidance with our human experience. But then, of course, the messenger is just a human and we're not perfect. And readers can mess up sometimes and get things wrong, et cetera, et cetera. We're not Zoltar machines. We're humans trying our best. And that's why evidence is so important. That's why you go to a reader who can tell you things that they could not have known about you or about the person or about the dynamic or about your loved one in spirit. And that's why I'm such a fan of evidence-based readings, because you can see, okay, well, if this evidence is correct, then I have a little bit more faith in the more nebulous messages that are coming through and the more sort of amorphous concepts that I can't ground into full 100% resonance in this time because enough time hasn't gone by for me to have those answers.
Yes, wow, that was such a great and dynamic answer, and something I also needed to hear as well, because that's a challenging experience, even within your own readings with yourself, where you pull a card and you're like, what? I don't know how this applies, or it just doesn't feel like it applies at all. And, one part of it that I really experienced too is like, especially when it comes to love and career, which are two things that you brought up, Shakira, and that are two things that are so deeply personal and can be really raw for us. And we have a lot of attachment to outcomes on, or at least speaking for myself, I certainly do. And so, it can be hard when you're really wanting to hear, for instance, thinking about my experience, like, this person is the one for me and it's going to work out. Even though a part of me clearly is feeling like it isn't because I'm asking about it.
Great point.
It doesn't feel in flow. I mean, the amount of cards I pulled for this last experience I had, the amount of times I went to my pendulum and then was like, okay, well, it said this time, it said that. It was like, I was searching for the validation that I knew deep down was not there, which is why I kept going to the tools to find guidance. And so I was very resistant to hearing this bad news about it that I didn't want to hear. And even going to your question about, well, can't people change or can't circumstances change? And so is this set in stone? I totally believe, and I think you do too, Taylor, that of course nothing is set in stone. And we all have free will and circumstances can for sure change. But I think a piece of it sometimes is accepting what's happening now as part of the change. So for instance, using my example, my connection with this person was not working and was not right in this moment. And perhaps it can be someday down the road, maybe, who knows? But what needed to happen was not me in this moment wishing it was right, making it be right, shape shifting it to be right, getting a card saying it was right. I think what maybe will help it work out ever, and again, maybe not, was accepting in this moment it's not right and we needed to let it go. And that perhaps will be the shift for this person to do the work and make the change, and me as well, and will allow for an experience later on where we could come back together or where we will find someone that's more in resonance. But so even accepting that I didn't get the answer I wanted because I want it to work out, and the answer seems to be this isn't right now, but that is even a piece in the puzzle of both of us changing in a way that it could work out down the road. And me forcing it in this moment will only give me the same result of what the cards unfortunately are saying, which is, I don't think this is correct in this moment. And that's just specific to me. I, of course, have no idea what you're going through. But I think that's like an important piece of the puzzle of like, it's so hard when we're attached to outcomes and we want to hear an answer that says, yes, this is the big opportunity of your career here in this moment. But perhaps this not being the big opportunity for your career in this moment is what's leading you to that big opportunity. And if we can just accept that, we can carry on down the path that will get us there versus continuing to try and push in this direction that we've decided is correct.
Yes, that is such a good point. So many things you just said. Like, one is asking the question already shows an element of doubt. And why is that? And like I said, Ari is the first guy I've never asked the cards about because he told me himself, and I never had that question. And that's to do with anything, not just romantic relationships. But the other thing is, just like you were saying, this might be the catalyst for the changes that need to happen. And if a message isn't fully resonating with you yet, or not even that it's not fully resonating, but that you can't comfortably hold it, that you don't want it to be true, that it's not comfortable to hold it, that maybe a part of you fears that it's right, but that you aren't ready to give up yet. That shows that you have more experiences to live in this. And I talk about this in the Love Life workshop, how when we go through a breakup, one of the optional phases of the breakup, like protocol that I talk about, is around two. Sometimes we need to prove to ourselves over and over and over that what we hope for someone or something or a situation isn't what we think it is. We have to like see the reality for ourselves over and over and over and over again. So sometimes if we're having this experience where we're not ready to hold the message yet, it means that we're not done living out the lesson in the dynamic with that person, and that there's more to learn from it to either get to a place of detachment from outcomes, get to a place where you guys can both change and grow and the circumstances can shift, or the job, relationship, living situation can shift, or that you get to the place where you're ready to accept the message. So there's so many different ways that this can come about, but if you have this experience of feeling uncomfortable with a message, then that's okay because we're humans here to experience our lessons and our growth. And maybe you just aren't done with this dance yet. And the message will make more sense as time goes on.
Such a good point, and ties into your story about hearing that you were going to be an angelic intuitive. It's like in that moment, that was a seed that was planted and you received that information and it didn't totally feel in resonance with you because there was still a path to walk for you to get to that place. So it was still a message that you needed to hear in that moment. It was like the first drop of the waterfall or the first tiny seed that was planted about it. And you weren't in a space where you could fully embrace it and say, yep, and tomorrow I'll do that. But it was that tiny kernel along the path that helped shift you ever so slightly to start stepping more fully into it and developing and going along that path. And so I think that's a good way to think of it too. It might not feel resonant to us, but it could be a seed that starts to be planted that blossoms then into the full resonance that isn't quite there yet and doesn't need to be. It wasn't supposed to be fully there yet. This was just the beginning of that shift.
Absolutely. And just a cool side note about that reading was that reader in particular had me draw cards out of her deck. She didn't draw the cards for me, I drew them. And I drew a bunch of cards. I want to say 14 cards or like something like that. And she said, I've never seen this in my career, but you pulled every card out of my deck that has an angel on it. She's like, there's only a certain amount of cards with angels on the art in this deck, and you pulled every single one. And I was like, wow. Even though those messages that I would be a reader one day didn't fully resonate and also could be perceived as painful because that would mean that my comedy writing career wasn't going to turn out, which I was very attached to that outcome. It's still that message. I come back to it in retrospect, and it's from this version of self that I can know I was supported all along the way. Similar to that beautiful story of the oracle card deck that she had never used before that had exactly symbolism from her past loved ones in spirit on one card. It's like she can look back on the message and buying that deck and see she's been supported the entire way. And sometimes it just takes our consciousness a second to catch up to our higher self, and that's okay. And we think we know what we want to work out so badly. And these messages in retrospect are like, it's okay. You get to a place where it will resonate with you one way or the other. Either it will make sense because time has gone by, or it will make sense because you can take the message, or you'll just realize, actually, no, I'm not taking this message and it doesn't make sense. But clarity will come one way or the other. Don't get too dogmatic about it. Don't get too superstitious. The messages in any reading are for you. And if you don't find them helpful or productive, file them away under the category of I'll revisit at another time. And I spoke about this in the Tarot P episode, how when we're in a reading, it's like we're not going to the mind for answers. We're going to a higher place. And the mind is maybe this like high schooler consciousness, but instead we're going to knowledge itself. But we're in this high schooler consciousness, all of us, and we all also have access to knowledge itself, all of us. But sometimes it just takes us a second to get to the graduation ceremony so that these things might make sense to us. Like my example of being a reader, like we keep using.
Yeah. And like what we were talking about earlier in the episode is that I think all pieces of it are helpful information along our journey of developing and stepping more deeply into ourselves. So even the experience of getting information and feeling like, absolutely not, I don't resonate with that at all. That is not for me. It's like that helps us along our journey, even if it feels crunchy or even if it feels like it's either information about how we can tune more into what does resonate with us, or it's information about something we're resisting. And it's also not necessary to have the answer about what it is. But it's like even the experience of that reaction is its own, like I was saying, struggle or thing that helps us shape ourselves. So I've had that before where I was like, just felt so resistant to something I've heard. And I feel like as time went on, it helped me step more fully into the realization of like, yeah, that did not resonate with me. And that's okay. This suggestion didn't feel right. And it brought up a lot of feelings. And the more I've stepped along my path, the more I'm like, yeah, that's okay. You don't want that thing that was offered to you. And even that is like this beautiful journey of realization and deepening. So I think we want to jump to the end and have the answers and be the healed version of ourselves. It's like, got it, did it for sure. And I think that would mean like we're at the end of the book. And the point isn't to be at the end of the book. The point is to be in the journey of the story with all its crunchiness and all its information as we continue to grow and develop. And these are all just parts of that, even if they feel wrong and crunchy. I'm really trying to embrace those moments of like, this doesn't feel like what I want. And like, what a growth moment that must be too.
And sitting with what we don't want is such a true yardstick of our spiritual consciousness and evolution. When things are easy and flowy, it's so easy to be spiritual, quote unquote.
Yes.
It's when we're sitting with what we don't want that we truly see the growth of our consciousness and how we can trust in something higher that we're not seeing yet. And I love what you said about wanting to skip to the end of the book and have all of the answers. Because imagine reading your favorite book that's like a 7-book series, and the protagonist gets the answer to something they're grappling with in book 5 on the first page of book 1. That wouldn't make sense to the reader or the protagonist. It's all an evolution of consciousness, and getting a reading doesn't absolve us of the ups and downs. It's guiding light to make it the most graceful, powerful journey possible. Because I always say, like, when we approach spirituality from a place of trying to absolve us from the human experience, that's where spirituality just becomes another form of trying to control. And that's not true spirituality. And so come at it from a place of openness, knowing you're supported, getting little breadcrumbs on the path, and just trust that in retrospect, things will make more sense. And sometimes we have to let the messages breathe. Sometimes we have to let the messages breathe and just let yourself do that. And as a reader, it can be really scary on our side of things when we have to let the messages breathe because it requires such trust in what we're getting. And I think that that can sometimes be the most powerful type of message is when it's something that is proven right with time because it shows that we're not just reading your mind. We're getting information from a higher source that sees things that are not in your consciousness. Even in mediumship readings, when I get a piece of information or evidence that the sitter doesn't know, but then another family member can validate, that's so powerful because that again shows I'm really speaking to your family member. I'm not just reading your mind. Leave room for magic, my loves. Leave room. It doesn't have to make sense right away. Leave room for magic. Let yourself have the gift of whatever you need to experience to feel good with an outcome or an ending or a pathway. And make sure you follow your truth. And if a message doesn't fully resonate, file it away, but just leave space for magic. And sometimes things won't make sense right away, but there's even potential for magic in that. And I've just loved this episode. I think that these were great questions. Thank you so, so much for sharing them. And Claire, are you ready to transition to sitting with spirit?
Yes, let's do it. Thank you, everyone.
Welcome back to Sitting with Spirit, my loves. This is the part of the podcast where I sit with our angels and our loved ones in spirit and give the messages, take what resonates, leave the rest. And if you know somebody who could use this message, please send it their way. So, as I was tuning into our angels and guides, the very first thing that came through was this idea of shedding of the snake skin. And I feel like we're in this like sort of ending of an era. And I know that at the time of recording, Pluto's about to move into Aquarius. We're all sort of in this space of transition and death and rebirth. And the shedding of the snake skin is very much attached to that. And when it comes to a shedding of a snakeskin moment, it's not just about one little change. It's a series of changes that add up to a next level version of self that want to be born. And when we go through a shedding of a snakeskin moment, things that used to resonate with us, things that we used to participate in, things that we used to move through without question might not feel the same or resonate the same in our heart space anymore. And we're at this moment of self-discovery, of really saying, does this still resonate with me? Am I just going through the motions? And this might include even a style change, a friendship group change, a reorganization of our room, like everything on the external and the internal is part of the snakeskin shedding, and they both reflect each other. And so, with that being said, they were also really highlighting the South Node in Libra right now. And the South Node is like past, it's where we came from. And Libra is the sign of like dating, relationships, equal relationships, justice, fairness, balance. And I feel like there's a inextricable link between this shedding of the snakeskin moment and how it translates to our relationships, both romantic and platonic. And if we're waiting for our relationship patterns to change, I think first comes the shedding of the snakeskin, just like the Aries and the Libra polarity, where Aries is all about self and identity. And the snakeskin is really saying, just time to shed that outdated layer of what we used to accept, of how we used to show up, and things that are just no longer authentic to who we are. I know it's really interesting because we're living through a moment in history that is a repeated moment. We lived through this collectively in the United States in 2016. But how are we moving through it differently based off of who we are now in 2024 going into 2025? And I feel like that's a part of the snakeskin shedding too, looking at where we give our power away, where we give into narratives of powerlessness, and that's on the micro and the macro scale. And once we shed this outdated layer of skin that we've been carrying for far too long, that will affect how we show up in relationships. And I know I've spoken about this in an earlier episode. I think it was the Love Life episode, that it's so appropriate that the Libra symbol is the scales, because what we bring up to the scales as we shed a layer, that will inevitably change what the equilibrium is showing up as on the opposite scale from us, because we're changing what we're showing up as. And so it just feels like it's a really powerful moment for love life and relationship upgrades, for healthier dynamics, for really coming into a new chapter within how we relate to others. And that all starts with the shedding of the snakeskin. And then I saw my symbol of a tornado. And when I see that symbol, it's my symbol for feeling like there's a time of chaos, feeling like things are out of our control, and feeling like things are just sort of all over the place. When I see this symbol, it's really interesting because the tornado symbol was shifting into a downward arrow as I was watching it. And my message that came with that is that it's really time to find the eye of the storm in our root chakras. So this is really a moment to not be spinning like a top in our head and our mental realms, but it's really a time to come down to grounding, paying attention to our physical body, being in touch with like our physical world that we can really control around us, and our anchor to that, and our community and our friends and the people around us. It's like getting out of the cerebral realms and a little bit more grounded into the practical, tangible realms, moment to moment, day to day, through this time that feels really out of control and chaotic. And then there was like a really beautiful sensation shift. And all of a sudden, I felt just the most powerful force of love and magic. And it felt like there is this potential, even in the midst of this tornado energy, for a deeper layer of love. And even as we shed the snake skin, that outdated skin leaves room for us to experience deeper love in our hearts, deeper magic, as we make room and new energetic space for that. And so I really do want to communicate this sense of hope and magic that was really being portrayed to me as just this calm sense, like we are here and we're not going anywhere, and you are loved and supported. And as I was feeling that from our angels, it shifted into our past loved ones. And they, like, I have chills as I'm talking about this because they came through in such a full force way. I know that when this comes out, it's Thanksgiving, it's the holidays, grief is really heightened, and that there is just this feeling of we are around you in full force, and we've never ever left, and we never ever will. So I was like figuring out who my primary link was going to be with for this segment of the podcast today. But before I could get there, it was more about the community of the spirit world that's right here, right now with us, and how loved we are and how supported we are. I saw mothers, grandmothers, grandfathers, friends. There was just such a community. Just like we have here in the physical world, we have a community in the spirit world that are all together, that love us and are not going anywhere. And it's the holidays, and it's a time where grief can be heightened. I know a lot of people feel a little disconnected from their family at the moment. There's just so much going on in the collective, and the spirit world is just turning up the force on love. Just like we are asked to do that here on the physical world, they're doing that on the other side as well. And we're all mirroring each other in a beautiful language of love. And I really want to highlight that. And so then after I sort of felt like everybody's people wanted to be heard for this specific episode that's coming in the holidays, so they all came as a group, I started to branch off to a father energy and spirit who also is a grandfather. And he was talking about how his grandson was having a hard time, and how somebody listening, it feels like a mother listening, is having a hard time with their youngest son. I got this feeling that there was a lot of secrets and hiding things, and a hard time communicating, a hard time expressing feelings, maybe even some mental health stuff in terms of depression or just not feeling like their normal bright self. And when this father in spirit came, he was talking about how important this message was. And he came with his mother as well. So it would have been the person's grandmother and the son's great grandmother. They were there together in spirit. And they were talking about how when it comes to family and parenting, perfectionism does not exist. And that we can be so hard on ourselves of like, we have to do this and I have to do that. But in reality, every single soul that comes here has their own free will, their own lessons, their own complicated, intricate network of energetic connections to not just you, but everyone else in the world around them. And that sadly, but not sadly, we're not in control of that. There is no such thing as perfectionism. And they really wanted to stress that. I also felt like with this message, and this is specific here, there's something about this son's dad needing to be more involved. That, like, you as the mom can speak until you're blue in the face, but there's something about the dad that needs to be more involved, more direct, and just maybe have that like tough love or something there. And the message that they want to convey is that instead of trying to go to your son, there might be some getting on the same page with his dad that feels important, and like teamwork there that feels important. So that's a very specific message for at least one of you. But the message for the collective, especially in this heightened time of intensity around the holidays, is that there's no such thing as perfect when it comes to parenting, and that you just showing up as your best, as your most loving is perfect, because that is your authentic self. I also saw this father in spirit showing me a Christmas tree with special ornaments. And I felt like there was something about him loving Christmas and there being an ornament that was really special to him. And I saw this kind of Tiffany color blue, like a robin's egg blue, as he was talking about that. And then I also saw his mom in spirit, and she was talking about knitting like doilies or something. And I felt like there might be some sort of Christmas knitted needlework, something there with hers that's a decoration of hers that you might put out during the holidays. And I feel like in this holiday season, our loved ones in spirit are piggybacking off of this, that they love the little decorations and traditions and touches that we do to remember them and honor them. And all of those things bridge the gap of the spirit world to our physical world. And they're all like, the spirit world is superimposed right here, right now. It's not a separate place. It's not floating on a cloud. And so when we have these beautiful things of remembrance for them, it just brings the love closer and closer and closer, and they can make their presence known, because then we're thinking about them and we're talking about them and we're remembering them, and they can piggyback off of that energy. That's just so beautiful. And the last message that they were talking about is how chosen family is just as powerful and important as biological family. And so through this holiday season, there's also a message here of like you choosing who resonates with your heart and who lights you up and who feels good for you to be around. And that is soul family, and that is so important too. And I feel like in this moment of the shedding of the snake skin, and that is definitely going to translate to our family relationships, our family dynamics, how we relate to the people around us, that it is more than okay. And they're just giving this permission, your ancestors in spirit, to really sink into and be with the people that light up your heart and support your heart. So a lot of messages here really coming down to being with your loved ones that don't have to be biological, but can be biological, but just being with your loved ones, remembering your loved ones in spirit, and knowing that no matter how chaotic and intense things feel here on the physical plane, the spirit world is really doing their part to just dial up the love and the support for us on the other side. So if you can even take 10 minutes a day and just set the intention of sitting with somebody you love in the spirit world, that is going to be such a powerful practice through this time. I really hope these messages are helpful. Claire, is there anything you want to say?
Oh, wow. This was such a powerful sitting with spirit, Taylor. I feel like I could say something about every single part of it. All just touched me really deeply and was what I needed to hear. And I think maybe I'll say just two things about it. That First of all, I just loved what you expressed about family and that we don't need to be perfect and that our family members don't need to be perfect. And I think, family can be challenging dynamics. I experienced this where my personality type and my family members' personality types aren't exactly in alignment. And maybe they wouldn't be the type of people I would find in life as my chosen family. And I think then sometimes it can get crunchy where you almost want to push them to be like you or to fit into your box, or you can see how they would be thriving so much more if they would just this or that. And I just loved what you said about we're all here on our own specific journeys to learn our own specific lessons. And we are not here to shield our family members from that or direct them away from it. They're on their journey with their stuff just as we are. And all we really need to do is show up to them with love. And I know that that can be challenging, but I really, especially in this moment where it feels so chaotic, like you were saying, I do feel like I have been connecting with people in such, even some kind of strangers, in this deep love and hope, because I think so many of us are feeling this scared hopelessness. And so I've been able to connect with people in the love that we both still have. And so it has been this blossoming of love in such a beautiful, unexpected way. And so, yeah, I think just connecting deeper into that and meeting our family where they are and knowing that we also get to create our chosen family, like you said, and maybe find that connection we don't necessarily have with our family members in the chosen family. And we don't need to get everything from every person. Our family can give us one thing and our chosen family can give us another, and allowing for that to be perfectly imperfect.
Yes, I love that so, so much. And I just want to comment. First of all, it's so beautiful, everything you said. But I also want to comment on the fact that you're an Aquarius, because I feel like this is an important message for the collective as Pluto has moved into Aquarius. Aquarius is the sign of the black sheep. It's somebody who comes in with a different consciousness and is here to be an example, and they can feel really ahead of their time, and it can be a lonely consciousness place to be where we have Aquarius placements. And I think Pluto moving into Aquarius is transforming our ability to sit with our authentic self and to be okay in that. And the beautiful other side of that Aquarian energy is that it's also the sign of friendships and community. And so Aquarius is the sign that's I'm going to bring together the unique, special, authentic people that resonate with my consciousness. And Capricorn is the sign of traditions and doing things the family way. And then each sign that comes next is a response to the sign before it. And so Aquarius is well, now I'm going to break the rules and I'm going to do things my way and I'm going to find people that I resonate with. And so I think Pluto in Aquarius is going to push all of us to really assess our communities, our friendships, who we surround ourselves with, and to feel powerful enough to have our own back. And I really liked what you said about our family doesn't have to be everything to us. And part of Aquarius is choosing those rules for ourselves. And so I think that that's really beautiful. And I think with Pluto and Aquarius, and for those who have strong Aquarius placements, it's you're not here to fit in with the status quo. You're here to learn to protect your light, to be your authentic self, regardless of the family or circumstances that you incarnated into. And I think that for some of us, we think, oh, I have this attachment to outcome that family has to look this way. And this is how other people's families are doing it. And this is how it's portrayed. And I myself have struggled with that as well, especially after my mom passed and a lot of things have happened within my family. And as soon as you can find that detachment from outcomes, it's so powerful when it comes to everything in life, especially family as well. And for some people, it is their actual soul purpose to go on a journey of feeling like the black sheep. For some people, we incarnated into circumstances where we're not meant to be like the Brady Bunch, and that's okay. And so I think if we we can all just accept a little bit more of what is instead of trying to force or beg or change or shift or control. I think that that is such a powerful choice to detach from outcomes so that we can work on being the architect of what is in our control to our most authentic, powerful place.
Yes. Wow. I really relate to all of those Aquarian attributes that you said. But yeah, I think we're even more powerful when we step into the dynamics like that, when we're not trying to force and change, but we're just accepting what is and showing up as our authentic self. Then we can almost be like an example for our loved ones. And then they can choose how they respond to that versus maybe trying to push them and shapeshift them into something that we might see would be better for them. That is a tricky, sticky place. And I know it comes from love, but I think there's like a deeper layer of love, of trusting that this person is on their journey. And that if I just stand in my light and my power and love them authentically for who they are and where they're at right now, that will probably be the best help for them on their unique journey and also my own.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is set a boundary and say, I'm not going to allow any more enablement of abuse, and I'm not going to allow resentment to grow, and I'm not going to allow myself to be pushed down. And so love can come through in a lot of different ways. It's not always the Hallmark movie version of what a family looks like, and that's okay. I think the message that we want to leave you with today is that as we move deeper into the holiday season, really tune into the truth of what your heart is asking for, let go of outcomes, and just know there is no such thing as perfect, especially when it comes to family.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So have a beautiful, beautiful week, everyone. Have a beautiful Thanksgiving. Much love, and we'll see you soon.
For more information on Taylor and her work, go to angelsandamethyst.com or connect with her on Instagram at angels_and_amethyst. She is the one verified account with this name and will never DM you for a reading. If you have any questions about intuition, spirituality, angels, or anything and everything magical, please email contact@magichourpod.com. We will answer listener questions once a month in our solo episodes. Are you an aligned business owner that would like to advertise to our beautiful hummingbird community? Please email contact@magichourpod.com. Make sure you're subscribing to Magic Hour so you never miss the magic. And don't forget to leave us 5 sparkling star reviews. They help more magical people find the pod. Please screenshot and email your 5-star reviews to contact@magichourpod.com, and we will send you a free downloadable angelic meditation and enter you to win an angel reading with Taylor Page. The next giveaway will happen when we hit 166 5-star reviews.
Thank you for listening to Magic Hour with Taylor Page. Remember, you are magic.